Welcome to Experience Junkies. On this show, I bring together meeting and event professionals, global travelers, jet setters, and more to relive the moments we never want to forget. More importantly, we'll attempt as best we can to transport listeners to transformational points in our lives. By diving into the indelible impact these experiences have had on us, we decode small takeaways about how to be better humans than we were yesterday. Welcome back. So glad to have you listening to the Experience Junkies podcast. So today it's just me. I wanted to tell you about a recent trip I took and just kick off the show with a little solo episode, a little bit of just Deanna. I hope that's okay with all of you out there listening. But I was recently privileged, this was in April of 2021, to go on a trip to Mexico. And this was my first time out of the country since the pandemic began. I wouldn't say post-pandemic because it's currently September 2021. And I don't know if we're the fourth wave, fifth wave. I mean, there's lots of waves, there's lots of variants. It's like we're going through the Greek alphabet. But this was my first international trip kind of during COVID, if you will. And so originally I was just thinking, it was February, March in Ohio, and it was cold. And I wanted to go somewhere where I could plop a squat for a few weeks and work and be in a warm location, be close to the water. So originally I was thinking, let's go to Florida, right? That kind of would suffice. But I wasn't really a fan of how things were going in Florida, or still are going during the pandemic. And also I realized it was going to be a little too expensive for my budget, right? So then I just started giving it some more thought, and I said, what about Mexico? And I know that might seem weird to some that I was okay with going to Mexico, but not Florida. That could be a conversation for a whole nother day in terms of the safety of being in the country, in the United States versus out of. But based on my research, everything that I had looked at, things were stable down there. And I definitely found it to be that way when I was there. I felt very safe. I felt secure in that requiring the testing to come back, and their protocols, they were a little more stringent on things. So yeah, I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I just happened to mention this to a couple of my girlfriends. And before you know it, it became a group trip. And so we were all like, yes, we're doing this. So I decided to go to a town called Mérida, Mexico. It's on the Yucatan Peninsula. It's about 3.5, 4 hours from Cancun area. Why Mérida, right? What was the driver behind that? So I am a single mom, and I had started following a few single mom traveling communities on Facebook a few years back. And that city kept coming up as this kind of hot spot for single moms who were like digital nomads or, world schoolers with their children. And there's a community of like single mothers and also a very big Black expat community in Mérida, Mexico. And I'm like, what is it with the city? And so I just kind of looked at it, looked into like why so many people were drawn there. And the safety is really high. It's one of the top 5 safest cities in the North America. So that's including the US. It's very safe. The weather, you have a beach that's about 20 minutes away, and it's basically warm year round. The summers are sweltering, but the winter, the time of year that I was going to go was going to be warm. And so I was like, yeah. And cost of living as a American citizen living on the US dollar, the cost of living is much cheaper. So I was like, yes, that should work. So we went to Mérida, Mexico, and we were there for a week, and it was a great time. I had a great trip with my girls. We explored. I got to swim in a cenote, which if you don't know what a cenote is, you can look that up, but it's basically an underwater cavern, under a cave with water in it, if you will. But it's like underground. So I got to do that. Just got to meet with a lot of locals and experience really authentic Yucatan Peninsula food, which is a little bit different than the other regions of Mexico. So it was a great time. But as the week went on, I was realizing I don't know about anyone else who is an extrovert or an introvert. I don't know if the pandemic has altered your perspective on where you stand on that spectrum, right? I previously thought I was such an extrovert. I'm pretty outgoing. I can meet new people easily. But what I have found during this pandemic is I'm more introverted than I thought. Because I believe that the actual definition of whether you're extrovert or introvert is where do you draw your energy, right? Do you draw your energy being around people? Do you draw your energy being alone? And what I find is my energy is a lot more sapped a lot quicker being around people than it used to be. So again, I don't know if that's a an effect of the pandemic or if it was always there and I just didn't realize it and it's kind of brought that to the surface. But I definitely am more introverted than I thought. And I realized I need some alone time. So originally, after the first week in Mérida, my one friend was going to go back to the States. The other two of us were going to go down to the Cancun area and stay at a resort with her and some of her friends. And I decided, I think I'm going to go my own way at this point. You can go your own way. Sorry, not sorry, but if you're listening to this podcast, just realize that a lot of times I break out into movie lines and song lyrics. It is who I am. I will not apologize for it. Just know what you're getting yourself into, right? But so I decided I was going to rent a little small Airbnb in Puerto Morelos, which is about 20 minutes south of Cancun. And so she and I took we hired a private driver and we made the ride over to the Cancun area. And then that's when I kind of said, see ya. And I checked in with her all week. I wanted to make sure I was safe. But I get to my Airbnb and it was perfect. It was like chef's kiss, right? As soon as I walked in, you see those commercials where like people have clothes out of the dryer and they smell the detergent and they're just like breathing it in, right? Like taking these really deep breaths because it just smells so good. That's what it felt like walking into this little studio apartment. It was beautiful, beautiful. And it was just flooded with light. That was like the first impression I got was just the light, the airiness. There were two sets of windows. So one wall had windows on it. The other wall had, there was a balcony. And so there were glass doors to the balcony. And there was also a window in the kitchenette area as well. So it was just so much light. And it was immaculately clean. The Airbnb host was super warm and friendly. Her family actually lived down below the units. And when I got there, I was just like, I didn't know. I felt like I had been holding my breath. And all of a sudden when I got there, it was just like a weight was lifted and I released it. Right. And it was just like, and then I had a week to myself in Mexico. So I'm an entrepreneur and I was relatively new to the entrepreneurship life at that point. I was maybe a month or so in. And so this week was essentially a work retreat for me. I planned to work and also play, if you will. So the first thing I did when I got there is I went down the street. There was a grocery store and I got some food for the week. I wanted to make sure that I could eat like breakfast and maybe one other meal in the Airbnb and then maybe one meal out each night to kind of save money, but then also not stop progress. If I have to leave every time I need to eat, that's going to really affect productivity. And so then I get back to the room and I'm like, let's see how far I am from the beach, right? Let's map that out. It was a 2-block walk. So it was approximately a 5-minute walk, if you will. And the Airbnb host had beach chairs that you could take with you every day. So I was just like, yes, this was a perfect decision to spend 5 days here in this little studio apartment where I can work and play and also just kind of like have some me time, right? And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the photos. I'm going to share them with you, but I just tell you, when you first walk into the property, so it's a building. I think there were 4 apartments in the building, and when you first walk in, you're on the garden level, and there's a communal seating space. There's this lush greenery and a big fountain. So all day you have the sound of that water feature, of that water, just like a babbling brook in the background. Like, so, like, just thinking about it now, it gives me chills because it was such a calming presence in that space, right? So I get back from kind of scoping things out, getting my food, getting situated, and I'm like, all right, now what? What's the week going to look like? And I kind of mapped it out, right? What is a work retreat? What does that look like? So I made sure that I planned, a few hours in the morning for me to get some work done. I did take a couple meetings, and that was a lesson learned that I will not do that in the future if I ever do another work retreat, because it just hampered my ability to really zone in on projects I wanted to focus on. But then I also scheduled time for play. I made sure that I could have some beach time every day, and that's exactly what I did. So a typical day would look like I would wake up in the morning and I would work out. So my trainer was doing virtual training sessions at the time. So I would do a workout in the morning, shower, eat breakfast, and I was like ready to go by 7:30, 8 o'clock every morning. I'd do a few hours of work, like I said, maybe take a meeting or so, and then after lunch, I hit it to the beach. Now, I would just say this: I never really thought of myself as a beach person. Like, I liked going to the beach in theory, just because it was a break from the norm. Being from Ohio, we don't have beaches. I mean, technically we have beaches in Lake Erie, but any Clevelander, anyone from the northern half of Ohio would tell you that it doesn't count. But yeah, we just don't have like typical beaches in Ohio. So it's a nice break from the norm. But I think in the past, I've always seen the beach as a hassle, either because I'm going with my kids and I'm lugging lots of stuff and I'm dealing with them and making sure they're safe, making sure they're fed. I'm in mom mode. Or I've gone with my girlfriends and they want to be there all day, and like, okay, the beach is nice, but like, let's move on. Let's do something else, right? That's always been my MO. This has been the first trip to the beach where I've like truly gotten an appreciation for it. And I think it was because I was alone. I think it was because I was able to literally like just breathe in the air, take in the surroundings. I was on my own schedule. So this was the first time I had taken a true kind of solo trip. It wasn't like a work trip, if you will, where I was going somewhere for a conference or going somewhere for a meeting and, on the plane and back home, I was by myself. But during the event, I was with people. No, I was by myself. Now, obviously, there were people at the Airbnb, when I went to restaurants, when I went to the grocery store, when I went to the beach, there were people around, but they were not the people that I came with. They were all strangers, right? And so being on the beach, it was like I was praying to God, help me remember this moment, right? When life gets crazy, when life gets frenetic, when I feel overwhelmed, help me remember this overwhelming feeling of gratitude. Help me remember the smell of the salt in the water, the waves rushing over me. Help me remember the feeling of the sun on my skin and the soft breeze on my toes. Help me remember even the caw of the seagulls as they flew by, right? Like, help me burn this into my memory. Burn this into my memory, because I don't really want this experience to end. And like, again, like I have goosebumps thinking about it, because I think because I was alone and I could absorb it and I could consume it in the way that I wanted to, I got there when I wanted. I left when I wanted. I was in the water when I wanted. I was in the, laying out when I wanted. There wasn't anyone influencing me one way or another. It just was such a pure experience. And I've never felt like that on the beach before. And so it just really reminded me to be grateful. That was like the overwhelming sense, was being grateful. And also being appreciative of alone time. I loved it. I got so much energy. I got so much relaxation out of being, if you will, the captain of my own ship. Deciding, the one morning I got up and I said, I want to rent a bike. I'd seen a lot of people renting bikes around it's on an island, but around the peninsula. And I decided I wanted to rent one too. So I went down the street. There was it was a business, but it was right out of this couple's home, and they would rent you a bike. And so I just kind of biked around, and I filmed some of the surroundings, and I just had the time of my life. And you would have thought that I'd never ridden on a bike before, but it was just that freedom to have serendipitous activities that were really might be boring to someone else. Like if I had gone with someone else, they would say, I don't want to ride a bike. I want to do something else, right? I never had that experience. And so my biggest takeaway from this trip was to really seek out more times in life where I can take charge. I'm what you would call a recovering people pleaser, right? I like making other people happy. I don't like rocking the boat. I don't like making waves. I just like there to be peace and calm. So sometimes I will yield for peace, for the greater good. And I think having this experience where I was the captain, I was the leader from start to finish, it gave me a little bit of that empowerment back of some situations you need to take charge, Deanna. Some situations you need to, buck what everyone else is saying if you feel that a different route is better for you, for the group, whatever that may be. And so that was just I wouldn't consider myself, feminist in the term of those that are out, with the hats at the Women's March or anything like that. But in that sense, in that moment, I just felt like I am woman, hear me roar, right? I came on this trip. I've made certain I'm safe. I've done everything I wanted to do. And I left with feeling so full, a full heart, feeling full of pride in myself for being able to do it, feeling when can I schedule this again? I mean, I want to go back to that same studio apartment. I want to go back to that same beach and see if I can recreate any of it. But just, that's what I took home with me, is just, you are the captain of your ship. And you need to take the bull by the horns more often in your life, because taking charge is actually freeing, right? Taking ownership of decisions that are going to be better for you, better for your kids, better for your family. It's actually going to take a load off of you, rather than taking on the load of people pleasing, taking on the load of doing what society dictates to you. So I highly recommend, if you have never gone on a solo trip, to maybe try something out local. Go somewhere for half a day by yourself. Go for on a movie date. Take yourself to the movies. Take yourself, to a restaurant, because there's something really powerful and empowering about, dictating what you're going to do, when you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and not having to check in with not a single solitary other person. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for listening. Be sure to check out the companion episode on YouTube for some pictures and behind the scenes of this trip. And definitely let me know in the reviews if you've ever taken a solo trip, if you've ever taken a work retreat as well, and your thoughts on that experience. Until next time on Experience Junkies, thanks for stopping by.